There are times on the show where I lament the fact that I have to talk about things that are frankly a little bit depressing, because I hear very often that there are people who are a little worn out by the fight and that the culture wars are making them a little bit sick to their stomach. And look, I get it. Anytime that you're engaged in meaningful combat, it's going to be weary. You don't have to worry about that while sitting on the couch. That's actually relaxing. However, there are also times where on the show I talk about things that are a little bit, let's just say, a little bit on the dour side, but then it also brings me great joy. And that is the story that I bring you today at the top of the show. And that is that for all of you ladies out there, I have some bad news. Pumpkin spice is officially now racist. I know you didn't see it coming a mile away. There isn't a group of people out there that want to racialize everything, and even a group of people out there that will lie about their race or lie about even racial motivated attacks against them just so that they can use the race card to stir up controversy. I know that you didn't think that eventually everything would become racist, where it would be like even racist to be not racist. I know you didn't think it was coming, but if you didn't, it is. Everything is going to be racist eventually once the left gets their hands on it. They will find some way to make it happen. And they did it with what is the favorite spice this time of year. So according to the Washington Post, they said fall's favorite spice blend has a violent history. I bet you didn't know that pumpkin spice can give you chronic diarrhea. But that is not exactly what is going on here. In fact, there is a long storied history about pumpkin spice and how racist it is to consume pumpkin spice because it was taken from a group of indigenous people. The story goes on and it says this: the population of around 15,000 Bandanese was decimated to just a few hundred in a few months, said Alem Klulo. By who and for what? Well, the Dutch company was later accused of carrying out what some describe as the first instance of corporate genocide. And it was all for nutmeg, he said. At the time, nutmeg, one of three key spices in the blend known as pumpkin spice, grew nowhere else in the world. It was considered a miraculous substance, rumored to cure the plague, make consumers more beautiful, sharpen the memory, and calm the mind, Klolo said, and to rob husbands of their money when their wives go to Starbucks. Now, the implication here is obvious. Because of the racist past of pumpkin spice, you should know, be a conscientious consumer, that the first act of corporate genocide means that you must get rid of pumpkin spice. That means no more pumpkin spice lattes. That means no more pumpkin pie. And I don't go to Starbucks, so I don't know what else those other little frou-frou drinks that you pretend are coffee are actually called. But it's officially canceled. Pumpkin spice is no mas, people. Now, here's a couple of things that I think are important to bring out about this story. First of all, once again, we see that the left is interested in attacking the most insignificant things. Of course, we know that pumpkin spice grows in all parts of the world now, and people are not being killed for pumpkin spice, regardless of the racist and genocidal past of pumpkin spice. We don't have to be worried about that anymore, but the left runs out of things to talk about, so they constantly want to talk about things that really don't matter. And the reason is because they really have no moral ground to stand on, so they have to talk about insignificant things. And because they lack the moral fortitude to actually do something that really costs them anything. That's why they attack, the Cleveland Indians and the Washington Redskins, and they demand that they change their name. Not a single indigenous person really cared that the Washington Redskins were called the Washington Redskins, but a couple of female-minded, even if they were male, leftists got upset about it and demanded that it took place. And so, because it didn't cost them to do anything, they could stand up against it and protest it. But not a single one of these leftists who believe that America stole lands from indigenous Native Americans, not a single one of these people actually go the next step and give this land back to any Native Americans. The most they can do is try to make the government pay people in reparations. Again, it does cost them, but in an indirect way. They never want to actually do anything that will require any true moral fortitude on their behalf. That's why they attack things like pumpkin spice. And now the other thing is that we also see from this that the talk of modern racism and neocolonialism is really code. And it doesn't take a keen observer to see what's really going on when leftists try to attack things like pumpkin spice and use the term neocolonial. It's a tactic that's far too often, and it's used by the modern left in America all the time. Create a grievance in order to create a devil to justify whatever actions you deem necessary based upon the narrative. We saw it not so suddenly with COVID. All the people who decry the marginalized and the poor could care less about the unvaccinated devils who are losing their jobs. We even heard some bold enough to say, hey, if you're unvaxxed, we don't care, just die in the street. Throw them out of the hospital if they're not vaccinated. We heard this in the summer of 2020 with the BLM riots. Killing, looting, and robbing were all reparations. After all, whatever violence perpetrated upon innocent Americans is nothing compared to what happened, well, not to the protester, and not to their parents, and not even to their grandparents, but somewhere down the line, I'm sure because of the color of their skin, some white devil did something, and now it's time for payback. This might be a good time to remind you that a society based upon, the teachings of Christ might give us the knowledge that an eye for an eye makes the world go blind. No, we didn't say it directly, but obviously the implication is there. Petty differences dividing people is ridiculous. I don't expect that in the highest levels of our academic elites anymore, because our ivory towers are filled with pseudo-intellectuals being brainwashed with a very different message. Here's a supposed research paper from The Lancet, a highly respected medical journal. In this paper that's peer-reviewed and published, titled Navigating the Violent Process of Decolonization in Global Health Research, a Guideline, it says this: historically, decolonization has always been a violent process, and global health might experience the same. Disrupting and calling out neo-colonial practices requires courage to bear the cost that comes with doing so. Let me go ahead and tell you what that cost is if you're asking, and I think we all know. The cost is the senseless death of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of people who disagree with you. It means the murder of innocent men, women, and children, if necessary. The modern left decries the murder and the theft of indigenous peoples' lands and then celebrates the murder, theft, and rape of supposed colonizers in Israel when Hamas invades. We all know what neocolonialism means. Colonization is code for hatred of Western civilization, Christianity, and really religion as a whole, anything that disagrees with you. Normative orthodox culture must be destroyed and postmodern insanity put in its place. This is the cultural agenda of neo-Marxists, from the useful idiots in pulpits like Andy Stanley and David Platt to Marxist true believers like Talib and Omar in our halls of Washington. There is a militant cultural agenda playing out right in front of us. This makes modern leftism the most militant form of atheism we have seen since the likes of Stalin and Mao. And if this small majority had cultural power, you can rest assured that they would commit the same kind of atrocities their intellectual forefathers did in order to decolonize America, the church, and your family. If anything, I hope the conflict in Israel shows us that we are in a religious war. This does not mean that we should send troops to Israel to help them fight. It just means that what happened there could happen here. And I know what some of you are thinking. A story about pumpkin spice into, terrorism could happen here. Listen, I know it sounds crazy, but if I had told you prior to 9/11 that we're about to experience the most heinous terror attack since Pearl Harbor, you probably would have said, come on, Reed, the most modern military in the world? I don't think so. If I had, in December of 2019, told you that we're about to experience a global pandemic that will separate Americans over whether or not this was an actually bioengineered virus or whether or not Americans should take experimental vaccines, you probably would have said, Reed, come on, global pandemic, hasn't medical science progressed past that? I hope, if anything, what's happening in Israel, and even with little stories like this pumpkin spice madness, I hope we realize that, yes, we have advanced technologically in a number of ways. But one thing we haven't been able to overcome is human nature. There's really only one cure for that.
So you just got done watching a small excerpt of a much larger episode. You can find the link to that full episode down below in the description of this video. So you definitely want to check that out, because if you like that clip, you'll like the much larger episode. And while you're at it, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and click that little bell to be notified when great new episodes of Indie Thinker come your way. Thanks for watching.